Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of Witches of the Moon. I am your Monday hostess, Natalie, and this week in week 3, we are discussing familiars. My video is going to be a little bit short, just because I don't personally have a familiar. Let me explain a little bit about what a familiar is exactly, because I think there's a little bit of confusion on that topic. A familiar is an animal with which a witch has a deep soul connection. In movies, familiars are often portrayed as the eyes of the witch, going out and getting information and doing reconnaissance missions and that kind of thing. So if you think about, like in Sleeping Beauty, she has her raven that she sends out, Maleficent does, and the raven gathers information and finds out where the baby is. Now the baby's all grown up, so it goes back and tells Maleficent where Aurora is. Or if you think about movies like Harry Potter, where the rat's going out, or the owl is going out and getting information, or doing chores, so to speak, for the witch. Now, in reality, a familiar may provide a psychic link for information, and there is a psychic link between the witch and the familiar, but it may not work exactly the way it's portrayed in Hollywood. However, that doesn't mean that the witch isn't gaining something from the familiar. A lot of times what I see is that people with familiars find that the familiars want to be involved in their spirit activities. So, for example, if you're doing a spell, or if you're doing some sort of craft work, or you're participating in a ritual or conducting a ritual, the animal will want to be a part of that and will be kind of in your space. Familiars are also animals that, because of your deep spiritual connection to them, provide you a certain level of emotional comfort and support, as well as just a psychic support. So they may provide you information. I'm sure that there are people that have such a connection that, perhaps the animal witnesses something that the person can see psychically in their mind. I have just personally never had that deep of a connection with an animal. The closest I have come to having a familiar was I had a dog, a beagle, some years ago. His name was Duke. And Duke was the first dog that my husband and I owned as a couple. And I loved that dog. Loved that dog with all of my heart. He was just the sweetest, most loyal, well-behaved animal you could ever meet. And he knew when I was upset, he would come and he would nuzzle me and try to give me comfort. And the poor thing thought he could talk. It's the funniest thing. I'll tell the story. I was cooking dinner one night. I was making beef tips and noodles, and so I was cutting the fat off of the meat. I was trimming the fat, and he comes over and he kind of bumps my leg, and he looks at me and he goes, "Exactly this pattern." And I said, "No, Duke, I'm not going to give you any of this meat. This is for our dinner." And he goes, kind of rolls his eyes, and he goes and he sits down by the back door. And a few minutes later, he gets up and he bumps me again, and he goes, same pattern, folks, same pattern. And I said, "No, Duke, I am not going to give you any of this meat. This is for our dinner." And he goes, and he goes and he sits down, and so finally he gets up and he bumps me again, and he's slower this time so that I would be sure to understand, goes, and I was like, "Do you need to go out?" And he gets all excited and runs to the back door. And my husband, who had been, with his back against the cabinet, kind of looking at his phone, looks up at me and he goes, "You understand what the dog is saying?" So I guess I do. I'm a speech pathologist, so maybe I understand patterns and communication better than most. But that's exactly what he wanted. And so from that point on, whenever he wanted to go out, he would go, so he thought he could talk. But that was probably the closest that I came to having a familiar. I really did feel a connection with that dog. I knew when he was stressed. He knew when I was stressed. And I guess that's about as close as a familiar can get. I suppose that would be the definition of a familiar. I do not currently have, of the 7 dogs that I have, I personally do not feel a deep connection, that deep of a connection. I love all of my pets, don't get me wrong. My pets are important to me. They're like little furry children in my mind, you know, especially now that all of my children have grown and kind of left the house. Our youngest still lives with us, but she's 20, and so we never see her. She works 2 jobs, and she's got a boyfriend, so she is never home. She walks in, you know, after job number 2 is over, and she's spent time with the boyfriend, so it's maybe midnight, 1, 2 in the morning. She'll crash out till 5 in the morning when she has to get up for work, and then by 5:30 she's out the door for work. So, you know, they've kind of, I don't want to say taken the place of my children, but they certainly have filled the gap left by the fact that I don't have children to care for anymore. So my pups are my pups, you know, but they're not my familiars. Uh, so, you know, that's going to be my video, folks. You know, I personally do not have one at the moment. I don't know if I'll ever have another animal that I'll feel that way about. Maybe I'm subconsciously putting up some sort of barrier, because it was very painful for me, intensely painful for me when I lost Duke. He had cancer, and I had to put him down, and I will never, ever, 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 ever do that again. It was awful. But I stayed there with him the whole time because I was not going to walk out of the room. The vet gave me the option of leaving the room, and I was not about to abandon my friend at that time. So I did not. I stayed with him, and it was god awful. But in any case, familiars, therefore, are just simply an animal that a witch has a deep psychic link with. It can be any animal. It does not have to be a cat. It does not have to be an owl or a rat, or it can be whatever animal you feel you have a connection to. Now, in my mind, I think it's a little easier to have a connection with an animal that's a mammal than a reptile, but I know people that feel very attached to their lizards and their snakes. So, I don't know, snakes are special too. So, in any case, I hope that you all gain a lot more information from the following hosts, and I hope you gained a little bit of information from me at least. So thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next week.